Welcome to Celebrity Interviews with Paul. I have with me Aileen Dickson. Aileen is the City Clerk of the City of Troy. Welcome, Aileen.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Good to have you here. How is life in the pandemic for you these days?
Well, we're going day to day pretty much, or as everybody knows, it's like hour to hour sometimes about how we can deal with everything that changes, seems to be changing all the time. But yeah, we're doing well. We're plugging away. We've been in the office pretty much 7 days a week for the past few months. And, the building's closed to the public, so we're still helping people at the door, but it hasn't really slowed anything down very much for us. So.
Well, it certainly is a busy time. So now, how did you come to become City Clerk of Troy? Like, I'm guessing, like, when you were 8, they said, what do you want to be when you grow up? That wasn't, like, the top 5.
No, it's so weird. I have a degree in political science, and never once in all of the years of education did anybody ever even say the words city clerk. I had no idea that was even a thing. So I had always worked on campaigns. I'd always been interested in politics. My high school friends and I would sit at the cafeteria lunch table and talk about what we saw on C-SPAN the night before. I mean, total nerd stuff, nerds. So, so about 20 years ago, I was in advertising, and I was looking to get into government because that's where I had always been interested in. And so there was an opening in the police department, in the police records department in Troy. So I took a job as the records clerk in the records department, just as a way to get more involved in government and help people. And then I heard about, it was right before an election. And so the city clerk's office was looking for people to help out on election night. So I was like, I didn't even know that was a thing. So I came into the clerk's office one night for an election, and I was hooked. And then about 6 months later, they had an opening. So I moved into the clerk's office as an office assistant. And over the next 10 years or so, I got promoted a few times. And then the big jump was in 2011. The clerk retired, and we didn't have a deputy clerk at the time. So I was promoted directly to clerk, and I've been here ever since. And it's like the job that I didn't know existed is now like my dream job. As weird as that turns out. Yeah. Somehow that turned out. So yeah.
Well, it's good that life works out that way for folks.
Right. Yep.
Awesome. What a journey. What a journey. Well, I'm glad you found your calling for us all. You're, of course, the city clerk. You oversee the election. We have an election coming up on November 3rd, which will kind of be a big one. I know we talked after the August election, the primary election. How are things different in 2020 now from previous times?
Yeah, so pretty much after the November 2018 election, when Proposal 18.3 passed, which, if you don't remember, that's the one that made it for no reason, that we could do no reason absentee, and there was a bunch of constitutional amendments that happened with that one. We knew at that point that things were going to be a lot different in 2020, and that was even before we had even heard the words COVID-19. So we already had, like, us in the clerk world had already known that 2020 was going to be a challenge. And there was some legislation that was floating around in 2019 that would help us with absentee county boards and giving us more time to process ballots. And in January of 2020 and February, before we had even had the pandemic here in Michigan, that bill was before the Senate Elections Committee, and some clerks and I went to Lansing and testified on behalf of that bill in support of it. And we were saying at that point, my testimony at that point was that we knew that the presidential election of 2020 was going to be huge for absentee ballots, and we were expecting a huge turnout. Obviously, the presidential election is always a huge turnout, but we knew even then that this was going to be a huge turnout. And then when the pandemic hit and the Secretary of State sent absentee applications to all the registered voters, we were like, okay, this is going to be gigantic. And so then it was just, I've had to completely retool. So like I think August was like, the March election was my 50th election that I had ever been in the clerk's office participating in or helping out with. And so this would be like, so this one coming up is like my 53rd. But like up until this point, I had everything kind of like set, like I knew, okay, on this day you do this, and on this day you do that, and then you do that. And then we knew exactly what the turnout was going to be because it's pretty much always the same, whatever. But
Right.
this year, all of that got thrown out, and we retooled everything for August, and especially to account for the pandemic and to account for the turnout. August was the largest turnout of any election we'd ever had of any type up to this point, and November is going to exceed that by a long shot. So
You mean August 2020, you had
yes.
more participation than like 2016, the presidential election?
Yep, because up until August of 2020, the largest number, the biggest number of absentee ballots that we had ever issued was about 15,000. And in August of 2020, we issued 23,000. And right now we're sitting at 28,000. And at this point, we're just getting started with preparing for November. I mean, obviously we're preparing for November. We've been preparing for it since July, but as far as the public is concerned, we're kind of just getting started. So people are just kind of now going, oh wait, I never applied for my ballot. And so we get ballot applications every day. And that number is 28,000 to start with. And so now we're going to increase it from there. And it's like, I keep saying every day, I'm like, how can there be anybody left that hasn't asked for a ballot yet? It's just like the quantity is just so massive for us. So
and that's out of what, I think 80,000 or so registered voters in Troy?
No, we have 60,000 registered voters. So we have
60,000 registered voters, 28,000 absentee applications already. So 50% of the people are already voting absentee.
It's easily going to be 50%, if not more than that. Yeah.
And that's just that much more difficult to process. That much more. You're not just pulling a number off of the machine. You've got to like count each of those one at a time.
Yeah. So it's so funny because the people that there's a saying like in the clerk world that like nobody escapes working the election. Like if you know a clerk, you're going to get involved in the election at some point, because it's just like, because we just need so many people. So my husband works at a precinct, and like other employees, like their family members, their children work in precincts. Like we just have to pull so many people. So we always get the same reaction is like, I had no idea that all of this went into it. Like, I think it's like some people just think that like elves show up in the precinct overnight and just plant everything where it needs to go, and then it magically appears and everything works out. But there's a lot of work that goes into preparing for that, 12-hour whatever period of election day. And to process absentee applications, there's many steps that happen before a ballot even gets mailed out, with signature checks, and then the application gets looked at 3 or 4 times for different pieces of information off of it. Then when we go to issue the ballot envelopes have to be prepared a certain way. And then this year we've added postal tracking to our ballots so that people, if we have their email addresses or phone numbers on file, they'll get text or email updates from the company that does the tracking, and they'll be able to see where their ballot is. I just did a demo this morning with the company to see how the portal works. And you can see exactly where your ballot is within the Postal Service. So it doesn't see, all it shows is the postal barcode across the bottom of the envelope. But so obviously it doesn't show anything that's inside the envelope, but you can see exactly where that envelope is anywhere in the postal system. So I can tell if it's sitting in the Pontiac Metroplex, or if it's been received by the delivery person in Washington State, anywhere in the country. So those kinds of things have all been put in place, and to get that stuff up and running, it's a lot of work. And then that's just to get the ballot out. When it comes back, it's kind of like just as much work, but just in the opposite direction. Like receiving it in has to have multiple steps. So yeah, we've been doing
one question I have is, do you still need volunteers? Do you need help?
Yeah, so we did a household mailing of postcards to every resident, every household in Troy, asking for more workers. And anybody who wants to sign up, there's still time. We have online training this time. We started doing online training in August. That's one of those things that had to be completely retooled because we used to only ever do in-person training. So all of our training materials are on the city website. It's troymi.gov/elections, and then you just go to the election worker training webpage. And we'll take applications all the way up until the Saturday before the election, pretty much. Because
Awesome.
if you can, as long as you can watch the videos and take the
Hmm.
little quiz, it's a super easy quiz. It's like 10 questions, you know.
Yeah.
As long as you can take the quiz and pass it, then
Hmm.
we'll assign you to a precinct. And even if we've already done the precinct assignments, we keep a list of people, because there's always last minute drop-offs. So we keep
Sure.
a list of people back that we haven't assigned yet, so that when those last minute drop-offs come through, we have people that we can, you know, at the last minute say, okay, you're going to this precinct because we need more people there. And we've had a good response so far, but we're always looking for more people, because there's kind of no such thing as too many election workers, you know, because like,
I would be willing to bet.
right, yeah, it's kind of,
So,
and you know, because you're a precinct, so you've
yeah.
seen you've seen it firsthand.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll include that link at on the notes on this, so that if people are interested, they can follow that and they can apply. So part of the anxiety I hear from people is, you know, just making sure their absentee ballot counts, right? They vote absentee, they want to make it count. What
Right.
what are the first 3 things I need to remember to get right so I don't screw it up?
So
What's your kind of go-to for that?
yeah, so the first thing, the most important thing, I mean, so assuming you've applied for your ballot and you have it in your hand, so that's the hard part, is
Yeah,
getting it in your
yeah,
hand.
right.
The number one absolute most important thing is to make sure you sign the envelope, because that signature is what we depend on. If there's no signature there, we can't even send it over to the absentee counting board.
Okay.
That signature gets compared to the signature that we have on file, which is basically your driver's license signature.
Hmm.
It also gets compared to the signature that we have on your application that you submitted to get that ballot.
Hmm.
So if without that signature, we can't do anything with the ballot.
Okay.
And I'm going to go back to that in a second. But the second most important thing is that you get your ballot back to us by 8 p.m. on election day. That can be brought to us at any of our 4 drop boxes. The drop box locations are on our website, but
Okay.
we have 2 large drop boxes at City Hall, and we've moved. We had 2 smaller drop boxes there. We've recently moved them. One is over by the library, by the main
Hmm.
entrance, and the other is over by the community center, by the main entrance. So you
Okay.
can use any of our 4 drop boxes, but make sure that you get your ballot back to us before 8 p.m. We're asking that people return them as soon as possible, and we're actually doing another mailer in a couple weeks to all the households that is going to talk about our drop boxes, and also talk about return your ballot as soon as you can. So, and if you
Okay.
can't use drop boxes, if you can't get there, you have a couple options. Anyone from your household or your immediate family, so that's your
Hmm.
children, your parents, your brothers and sisters, anyone that you live with, can return your ballot for you. That's in Michigan election law. So it's perfectly legal for
Okay.
someone who is in your immediate family or your household to return your ballot for you. Um, there was a judge's decision that said that any ballot postmarked by November 2nd could be counted up to 2 weeks after the election, and that may be valid, but at this point, we're still encouraging people to return their ballots before 8 p.m. on election day. You can also return it through the mail, and that is perfectly legal. There is no, I'm perfectly sound, secure, whatever, to return it by the
Right.
mail. There's no postage required for this election. Our ballots have prepaid postage on them, so you don't need to put a stamp on it. You can just hand it to your mail delivery person or take it to the post office and drop it in the mailbox. All the return ballots have postal tracking on them, so the same tracking that I just talked about would
Yeah.
update you on how your ballot's doing in the postal system. And then when it gets back to us, you'll be notified by email or text that your ballot returned to us. If for some reason you don't get the notifications, we can always look it up for you. So if someone
Okay.
contacts us and says, you know, I mailed my ballot on Monday and now it's Friday and why haven't you gotten it yet? We'll be able to look into the portal and see where your ballot is within the postal system. So there's many options for
Awesome.
returning
But
ballots. Yeah.
you know, it's funny. There's this myth that it's like, well, you know, you just get a ballot, you put it in the mail, and you forget like the whole backstory. And it's
Hmm.
impressive hearing all that stuff behind it all, and
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah. There's a lot of myths, myth busting out. We do a lot of myth busting in our job,
Yeah, I bet. I
and
bet.
undoing sometimes years or decades even of misinformation that's been floating around. So a
Sure.
couple things. First of all absentee ballots are counted no matter what the result of the election is. And we
Okay.
start counting them on election day at 7 a.m. We don't wait to see how the polls are doing or anything like that. They get counted as soon as the polls open for the in-person voters. That's when we start. That's when we start tabulating the absentee ballots.
Okay.
This year, it looks like we're going to be able to start doing pre-processing on Monday, but that does not mean tabulating. So the terminology, tabulating is scanning the ballot, putting the ballot through the scanner and actually reading the votes on it, the scanner reading the votes. Pre-processing is just slicing the envelope and separating the ballot in the secrecy sleeve from the envelope. So that's going to be able to be done on Monday. The tabulating still doesn't start until 7 a.m. when the polls open on Tuesday. It's done at a counting board, which is a sequestered environment for about 70 people who are going to be only doing that job. The other myth-busting thing that we always have to address is that if you have a ballot and you don't want to vote, if you've got an absentee ballot and you don't want to vote it, you want to go vote in person because maybe you're trying to see if, you know, the pandemic's going to go away before election day, or, you know, how you feel on election day, you're still allowed to go vote in person even if you had gotten an absentee ballot, because as long as you don't return it to us, you can still have it spoiled out by the clerk's office and then go vote in person. So if you show up at your precinct on election day and you've gotten an absentee ballot, there's an extra form that you fill out saying, yes, I got an absentee ballot, but I don't want to vote it. I want to vote in person. The worker is going to call City Hall and say, I've got a voter here that would like to vote in person, but they had an absentee ballot. And there's actually like a little icon by the voter's name that says this person had an absentee ballot issued to them. So we know that somebody had an absentee ballot issued to them. Then we would spoil the ballot out. So in case somehow it found its way back to our office, it wouldn't be able to be counted. And then the person would be given a regular ballot and be allowed to go vote in person. So
and you do that like for every single individual.
Right. We know that is a part of our training. That's a part of our training that's stressed really strongly with our election workers. So it happens all the time in every election, and we always follow the same procedure. And there's nothing wrong with changing your mind if you get an absentee ballot and you change your mind and you don't want to vote it. Sometimes people make mistakes on their absentee ballots and then they can't get a new one because the time has passed where it's too late to. And so then they would still be able to go vote in person and get a regular ballot. They would just have to follow that same procedure. It's one extra form, a phone call, and then go on to the regular process of signing the other form and getting your ballot in person. You still have to do all those other things after that, but it only takes a few extra minutes. But that way we're sure that that one person only got one ballot returned to us. So
now, are you going to get any sleep at all on the night of November 3rd, or are you just up for the duration?
So I'm hoping that I would be able to get some sleep, but our schedule in the law for the day before is 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. to do that pre-processing. We usually aim to be home and asleep by 9:30 p.m. the night before the election. So I'm probably still on track to do that. And then on Tuesday, we report at 5:30 a.m. to our office. And then I will be actually for both of those days, I will be in the counting board overseeing the absentee counting board. So I did that in August because our counting board's off site now because we had to accommodate that group of people, social distanced and all of that. So we moved our counting board over to the community center. And on Tuesday, I'll be in the counting board as well. And hopefully we'll be able to be out of there before the AM hours come back. But in August, we were there until 2 a.m. So it was a long day, but that just kind of comes with the territory. And that's actually not the longest election day. The longest election day I ever had was 27 hours. So anything shorter than that, I'm doing pretty good.
What keeps you up at night? What's the big catastrophe that, or have we already experienced it? Are we living it?
Yeah, so I pretty much didn't sleep between March and like August. So I joke that like this, I had dark hair in January. You know? Yeah. But yeah, so my biggest worry was how do we keep everyone safe, and how do we keep everyone in my office, but also election workers and voters, like how do we keep everyone healthy and make sure that everyone can vote in person if they want to, or vote absentee if they want to? And how do I get the workers in the county board to be safe? And how do I convince people that want to work for us that it will be okay? Like we're taking everything seriously. And August was kind of like, it wasn't, I don't want to say it's a dry run because it's not like we were just trying things. Like
Sure.
there was an immense amount of planning that went into August, and it came off really successfully. And everyone that worked in August wants to come back and work in November. And all the voters that voted in August said, you know, that they felt safe, they felt secure in the precincts. And you know, that I want people, no matter which way they want to vote, if they want to vote in person or if they want to vote absentee, I want them to feel secure and safe with their choice. And so we spent a lot of planning and had a lot of meetings to talk about how to make the precincts feel safe. And the biggest compliment I got was the deputy clerk, Cheryl Stewart, was going precinct to precinct while I was in the county board, and she said every precinct she went into smelled like cleaning products. And I'm like, well, then we win, because
Well, there you go.
like
Absolutely.
that was my goal, is to make everything feel secure and safe and keep everybody healthy. And
Awesome.
you know, so what we're planning on, so now that kind of like that is done, it's like, okay, well, we just need to like do that again for November.
Right.
So
Sure.
we tweaked it a few places where we felt it could be better, but we're basically going to repeat what we did in August because it was very successful. So I feel like now in a way it's kind of like a little bit less stressful because I already have that plan in place.
Yep. And it worked.
Mm-hmm.
So in the midst of all this, what brings you joy?
So I have 2 school-age children that go to Troy schools. I live in Troy also, so I'm a resident here and a voter here too. And they are hilarious. They're 11 and 15, and they keep me laughing all the time. My husband, Mike, keeps me laughing. We have a great time. We're always goofing around. Halloween's my favorite holiday, and even though we have to work that day, it's still my favorite holiday. But we started like, we have like a small group of friends, and we started having these little deck parties where we would play cards and have tacos and, you know, that kind of stuff. So just having like, being able to like have some little here and there socializing, you know, is great. And then over the winter months, I read a lot. And I also, last winter, I started doing cross stitches for everyone. So like everyone got cross stitches for Christmas. So like, that was, you know, I've got my plan in place for when it gets really cold. And I have my projects. Yeah.
And looking forward to doing them. That's awesome.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you for all the hard work you put in, all the thoughtfulness towards August, all the preparation, and thank you for, it was really enlightening to learn all the background in what you do and how, you know, city clerks like you across the country are diligently working hard to make sure that every vote is counted and everybody's voice is heard. And it's done in a responsible and safe manner. So thank you, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. It was great talking to you.